we're going to try to answer one of the trickiest questions in Marvel Future Fight today. How pay to win is this game in 2023? And the inspiration for this video actually comes from a Reddit post from about 4 days ago asking essentially the same question: is this game pay to win? But what I want to do is more so identify and analyze how this game has changed, because the answer is yes and no. Is the game more pay to win now than it has been in previous years, particularly if you're watching this as a player who quit and maybe is thinking about returning, or you are a veteran of another game who's thinking of picking this game up? Because the answer is yes and no. The game is more pay to win, but it's also not as pay to win, and I'll explain why as we dive in. So basically, the way to analyze if a game is pay to win or not is to first of all see the reward structures in the game and see how easily you can obtain the majority or all of those reward structures and those rewards with or without spending. So in that sense, in the sense of obtaining all of the rewards that are in the game, besides like very specific rewards, right? Because there are always, in every mobile game, there's very, very specific rewards where if you get first in something, right? If you're rank 1, you get an extremely, inflated reward compared to everyone else. So sure, if you want to be rank 1 in Vibranium, 3,500 crystals, wow, like most players can't obtain that. But most players can obtain, the whatever 180 to 220 crystals weekly that you get from being in the top 30% of Vibranium players, which is honestly not that hard to do, and you can do that on autoplay these days. So that's sort of the first thing to analyze. Now, I also have to say, as a sort of a general PSA at the beginning of this video, mobile games are by nature predatory games, and by nature they are games that are designed to make you want to spend insane amounts of money, right? And if you compare the value of playing this game for a few years, just spending $5 a month, you end up spending more than you would if you bought like a full cost AAA game like Elden Ring or Diablo 4 or whatever, Star Wars Jedi blah blah blah. You get what I'm saying. We're not making that argument whatsoever, right? If you like mobile games, if you like the structure of the updates, if you like the fact that the game has been live for more than 7 years and it's gotten updates for that time, and you like the IP, this is one of the longest standing Marvel games, period, right? Regardless of whether it's mobile or otherwise. So there are certain pros and cons to mobile games. I'm not getting into that. I'm not giving a value structure of this compared to spending your money elsewhere. If you have money to spend on mobile games, great. If you don't, great. It doesn't really matter to the core of this video. But in looking at how many rewards are accessible, right? World boss rewards and how those are structured, GBR rewards, how those are structured, PvP rewards and how those are structured, the game is not very pay to win at all. And this can actually be to the detriment of the game, which is really funny, because one common complaint that veterans and hardcore players have is that the rewards for high stages of content do not reflect in the difficulty. What that means is the rewards you get, and especially the most valuable rewards that you get from World Boss Legends, which are things like tier 4 materials these days, if you compare them to their cost in the shop and sort of the price per dollar, or the amount you're getting per dollar that you would have to spend to otherwise just buy that instead of playing this game mode, it doesn't really change whether you're playing a low stage or a high stage. So essentially, you can be a massive whale and you can spend tons of money perfecting your roster, and you can spend tons of time perfecting your gameplay to be one of the best players, and you can consistently clear stage 99, which is the highest stages of these World Boss Legends, and you can get very similar rewards to players that just go and unlock stage 1 and just play stage 1. So in terms of access to rewards, this game is very much not pay to win. In the way that mobile games are can be on a range of not pay to win, right? You still are going to have a much easier time with this game for sure if you spend a little bit of money, and this is one of those games where a little bit of money goes a long way, and then the more you spend, the less value you get. And so it's sort of on like a reverse plateau where you get a lot of value at the beginning, and then it plateaus, and then it drops off quite heavily the more and more you spend. But in terms of getting rewards that are in the game, right, if you look at events and what the quests are, the most difficult events are honestly the World Boss Legend introduction events. Those are really the only ones that the majority of the player base from a casual point of view can't access. So we're actually about to have one with the Kang tokens here. These are going to be for clearing Kang's World Boss Legend. So that can be a little bit inaccessible for newer players, for casual players, for free-to-play players, because they not only have to unlock Kang, but then they also have to defeat him. Unlocking him is probably more difficult than beating him, but that's just kind of the way things are structured. So from that point of view, honestly, Marvel Future Fight hasn't changed. Despite introducing tier 4 materials, despite introducing Dormammu GBR, and frankly, Dormammu GBR may be the most inaccessible piece of content for low spending and newer players. And it's the content where we encourage players to get carried the most often. But they've recently rectified this to an extent by adding Soul of the Faltine to Galactus, which is super easy. And, you know, new players can go in and actually beat Galactus after just a couple of days or a couple of weeks of playing this game. It's much, much, much easier than Dormammu. But, you know, to be fair, right, Galactus is a lot easier than Dormammu. But you can also beat Dormammu by just being carried by your alliance mates. And you get better rewards by being in a group anyways, so it sort of encourages itself. So I would honestly give MFF a pretty favorable score when it comes to how accessible all of the reward structures are for players. And if you think about, for players of all spending types, and then if you think about the hierarchy of characters in Marvel Future Fight, and you think of the strongest characters, how accessible are they? Well, yeah, you have to save up 6,600 crystals in order to get Magneto, in order to unlock Jean Grey, but there are no, like, the majority of strong characters in the game are not locked behind money walls. They're usually just locked behind time walls in one case or another. So either they're locked behind time walls in the sense that you have to wait for their upgrade to come around again in the sense of seasonal uniforms, or like I said, for someone like Jean Grey, you have to unlock another character by saving up, you know, the premium currency, and then you have to go ahead and get her later on. There are a couple of exceptions to this, obviously, like for example, Storm is clearly a paywall unit where you have to spend money in order to get her. To an extent, someone like Namor is paywall. However, you can get around this as a newer player with a premium selector that they give once in a while that could feature mutants. Professor X is pretty close to a paywall, but not quite. So there are some, characters that blur the line for sure. But the nice thing about Marvel Future Fight, like a lot of other Marvel games, is that you don't need any of these characters specifically to clear any of the content in the game. Now, you can absolutely make the argument that accessible rewards, while they may, like the rewards may be accessible by everyone, if you want to compete in this game, you do need to spend money. And this is where we get into the other aspect of why this game is actually more pay to win than it used to be. So that sort of concludes the first argument that I wanted to make in the first half of my answer, which is like, no, the game is not pay to win. It is pay to win, but it's not heavily pay to win, and it's certainly not more pay to win than it has been in the past when it comes to the accessibility of rewards in this game, right? How accessible the rewards are hasn't really changed over 7 years, over 8 years, and they're still highly accessible to low spending or free to play players. However, if you want to be competitive in this game on any level, whether it's PvE content like World Boss, whether it's PvP content like Timeline Battle, whether it's new content like Otherworld Battle, or something like Alliance Battle Legend, right? Any of this content that you want to be competitive in, that you want to see your name on the leaderboards, right? You want to see your name up high here, right? Any of that stuff, this game is more pay to win than it has been in the past. That is just, in my opinion, an irrefutable piece of information, because what they've essentially done is they've established the value of the resource that you need, basically the main resource you need in order to gain power currently, right? For the past year, it's been tier 4, and they've held strong with the exact same cost per unit here for this premium, for this, like, not premium currency, but for this currency that you need, right? Carbonadium, Soul of the Faltine, Life Seed, in order to tier 4 characters. Now, sure, there are more things involved in being competitive. It's not just getting tier 4 characters, right? You need CTPs, you need comic cards, right? But those things have had their value reduced and subsidized, right? We get more free premium cards and we have more access to premium cards than ever before. So that actually has gotten cheaper and easier to do. Now the RNG is still brutal, I know, but the fact of the matter is we do have access to more premium cards than ever, so it's as cheap as it's ever been. So the game is not more pay to win for comic cards, and it's not like they've introduced new comic cards to replace other comic cards and force everyone to adopt them. So the game has certainly gotten less pay to win in the comic card department. What about the CTP department? Well, it sort of remained the same. We do have more access to CTPs than ever before, and it can be a bit of a trade-off between CTPs and comic cards, but you also have the Battlefield shop, for example, and you have other ways of getting CTPs. They still give away a CTP every single month with the login events. So on the one hand, CTPs have gotten more common, but on the other hand, by introducing and sort of power creeping CTPs with things like the Mighty Rage, then the Brilliant Rage, of course, and then with things like the Brilliant and Mighty Egg to sort of completely replace things like Regen, they've certainly become more pay to win. So CTPs, in my opinion, are kind of the same or maybe slightly more pay to win than before, but certainly for artifacts they started off a lot more pay to win. They've gotten a little bit more accessible with things like personal vaults and then token events and trade-ins and stuff like that. But they're still pretty expensive. But nothing beats the cost that you need to invest to tier 4 a character, because there's only so many rewards that you get, and it's heavily controlled and throttled by the content, right? You really cannot amplify how much carbonadium and how much soul of the Faltine you get on a day-to-day or a week-to-week or a month-to-month basis. And the only way, if you want to remain very competitive to keep up, is to spend money. There's just no way around this. You cannot be very competitive. And again, your definition of competitive may change, right? So there certainly may be some people in the comments who feel like they are competitive in this game and they're very low spenders, and I applaud you. But realistically, if you want to be in like a top 20 situation where you're in one of the top 20 alliances, which is what, 8,000 players, right? So yeah, I would say that's pretty comparable. Sorry, that's 800 players, not 8,000. If you want to be in a top 20 alliance situation, you're in the top like 1,000 players more or less. You have to spend money regularly on this game, because there are just too many good meta characters for different content that you need. Now, you can certainly reduce, right? Realistically, you can reduce the amount that you need to spend if you just zero in on one piece of content. So that's where, again, your definition of competitive certainly comes into play here, and certainly affects how pay to win things feel. I certainly wouldn't say that they're less pay to win if you want to be competitive at all. But if, let's say, you only want to be competitive in alliance content, right? In alliance battle content, you don't want to be competitive in any PvP game modes, then you can certainly ignore a bunch of different characters, right? And it's easier in hindsight now to say this, but it's certainly still true. Like, you certainly would have never needed to tier 4 Ant-Man or Spider-Man or Venom. You never would have had to tier 4, you know, well, anyways, at least those ones you wouldn't have had to tier 4. You can make an argument as well for characters like Hulk and Carnage and Adam Warlock, but it gets a little bit hazy because of the timeline for when these characters. You certainly would have had to tier 4 Wolverine or Sharon Rogers or Blue Dragon. But yeah, it certainly is you know, something in my mind that sticks out as definitely more pay to win than it has been in the past. Because I remember when tier 3 came out, and it was certainly very expensive at the beginning, but they quickly, you know, they certainly more quickly subsidized and reduced the cost of tier 3 and by increasing the materials that we get, etc., etc. And they haven't done so for tier 4. And I think they haven't done so for tier 4 because they're making a lot more money on it, and they want to keep that gravy train going. So I kind of wanted to end this video with a bit of a, not a warning, but sort of like a caution to players who are looking to be competitive in this game. My advice to you would be to choose a lane. Trying to be competitive in all game modes in PvE and PvP content can be very expensive and also very frustrating, because more or less one of those game modes is going to see a meta shift at least once per update, right? We don't always get a meta shifting character for PvE. We might get one for PvP, but then it'll eventually swing back to PvE as we get, 10 plus updates a year. So yeah, caution there. But I think it's a very interesting conversation and topic, and I like that the answer is more nuanced than just yes or no, and it certainly depends on the lens with which you look at the game. I think they've done a decent job of balancing how pay to win the game is with how accessible it is. There are things that they could do better, but there are also things that they could be a lot more greedy about. So I'm kind of happy with it. I still think we need a bit more in terms of our agency to build up tier 4 materials. I do like the Battlefield shop. I think it's a little underrated, but I also still think we need just one more place to get tier 4 materials in an amount that's similar to Otherworld Battle, or maybe a tiny bit more, and then the game will actually start to become a little less pay to win. So yeah, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the topic and what your take is on how pay to win the game is. Thank you for watching. Smash the like button. It helps out the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.